Friends, welcome to a special episode of Ask MotoManTV. You're probably wondering, why is this special? Well, it's special for two reasons. Number one, we're doing this inside, and number two, I'm going to focus all the questions on trucks. So with that, let's dive right into it with a question from my home state. So the first question comes to us via Twitter from Dave up in Westchester County. That's about 10, 15 miles north of New York City, my hometown. And Dave, originally, this wasn't an Ask MotoManTV question. He was simply sharing a link with me from Auto Week talking about the unsold Porsche Cayenne Diesels. Now, to kind of bring you up to speed, if you've been living under a rock over the past year or so, Porsche's corporate parent, Volkswagen Group, has had just a little bit of problem with diesels. And so what they did was issue a stop sale order on virtually every diesel the company sells in the US. So it wasn't just the Volkswagen brand, it was Volkswagen, Audi, as well as Porsche. And now we're finding out a year later that Audi's kind of embroiled in this whole thing. So it was probably a smart idea, at least prudent, to not sell those diesel Cayennes, because maybe it'll be affected there, because effectively those are the same engines that are in the Audi. So that kind of brings you up to speed, but basically Porsche's been toying with the idea of how do we get rid of these unsold units. There are about 1,500, and they're sitting in either ports or at dealers unsold. So the concept they came up with, and a cheapskate like me loves this idea, taking new cars either with no miles or very little miles and then selling them as used cars. Now, maybe in another episode I will share with you that I did this twice. I bought two BMWs that were really new, but they were used in kind of a similar deal. But we can cover that another time. So they've got these 1,500 cars. How do they sell them? Well, here's the thing. The government has to weigh in on this because the EPA, Department of Transportation, basically everybody's breathing down their necks. Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi, they can't do anything with these cars until they get full blessing from the government saying, okay, once we agree what you're going to do with the affected owners, well, here's what you can do with the unsold cars. So let's assume, for the sake of discussion, that they came to an agreement with the government and they're going to sell the cars as used and a steeply discounted price as that. So you'd effectively be getting a brand new Porsche Cayenne Diesel, which you and I have driven on the show and we love it, for a used car price. Always a good thing. But Dave's question is, he lives, in the suburbs about 20 miles north of the city. He's not going to use it as a commuter. It's 20 miles a day, I think he's driving it. And then he wants to keep it at least 5 years. Now, you guys know whenever you ask me what car should I buy, this one or that one, I always ask you, where do you live? What are you going to do with it? And most importantly, how long do you want to keep it? Now, normally German cars, I don't suggest keeping past 5 years because they are a money pit. Porsches actually are more reliable than Mercedes and BMW, even when you have the gasoline engine. But when you add in the diesel engine, it makes them far more reliable. So I have no qualms in suggesting a Mercedes diesel because of the engine. So Dave, let me summarize this for you. If I were to tell you a story about an international conglomerate that's trying to hoodwink an entire country by cheating and getting around some sort of government regulation, this would be like the story of Hollywood legend that would end up in like an international espionage movie like James Bond. But instead, this really happened, and most importantly, we don't know what we don't know. Now, first and foremost, you absolutely need the U.S. government to bless these things because A, you want to get a title, and B, you don't want to have trouble when you sell the thing 5, 6, 10 years down the road. And then you're asking a cheapskate about what to do here and buying a car with some political issue around it. And I'm not afraid of that, but I want at least a 50% discount, even if it's brand new and has 0 miles on it. So let's take that $70,000 example. 35, I don't think you get hurt at all. But then remember, on this show, we've always gotten these Porsches with like ridiculous amounts of options, and the one we had was like $95,000. So in that case, I'd also want 50-cent dollars on that one. So that brings us to a target of 35, absolutely. 45, I think that's the line of demarcation. Anything over that, there are many other options that won't have the political issue and still have the performance. of a Cayenne Diesel. Now let's press on to another Trek question, this one also from the Northeast, but not one of political international intrigue, one of just buyer's remorse. So Daniel on YouTube, he says that he bought a 4Runner and he doesn't like it. Daniel, I don't know why you don't like a 4Runner. I love me a 4Runner. But I can kind of see where he's coming from on this one, because he's doing what anybody would do with a crossover, which is carting the Rugrats around, errands, honey-do lists, maybe a little commuting, and in northern New Jersey, which is where I think he lives, probably not the most ideal vehicle. So he came in on the Pathfinder episode, our round-the-block review that we did on that, and he's thinking he wants to do the Pathfinder. But what would I suggest? Now, the Pathfinder's a great choice, man, but you know the problem I have with it. It's got a CVT, and I know people like to beat me up that I don't represent the normal person in terms of car choices. Well, hello, I've been very honest with you that I'm a Lotus guy, and I will only drive cars that leave me on the side of the road 2 times a year, and they're built in a shed in the southeast of England, so I'm not a great barometer of automatic transmissions. But I can appreciate that most people do want automatic transmissions. So while I would suggest a Pathfinder, I would have the caveat as make sure you like the way the CVT responds, because if I'm really being honest, for fuel economy, CVTs do actually really well. They do better than other transmissions, and that's why Nissan uses them so much. So if you want a larger crossover with very good fuel economy, it's kind of hard to beat the Pathfinder. But you know me, I've got to give you other suggestions. Now, you probably think I'm a shill for Hyundai Kia, but I keep on suggesting the Kia Sorento. It's probably one of the better values out there. You look at the cost of that Pathfinder we had in the show. It was a great vehicle. It was screwed together fine. I think it's actually pretty good looking. But it was a lot of money. It was like almost 50 grand. You can get a Sorento with similar equipment, actually all the same equipment, that I think is as good looking for significantly less money. Now you could also get the Santa Fe, which is the same platform, it's just a Hyundai. I personally think the Santa Fe is a better looking vehicle, but these will do everything you want the Pathfinder to do. Now, if I'm really being honest, I don't know this technically, but I think the Pathfinder is a bigger vehicle and may store more people. I don't know how many kids you have, you didn't actually say. But then there is another suggestion that we cannot wrap this question up without talking about, and that is the Mazda CX-9. It is, I am amazed, A, how great it drives, B, that Dave Coleman was able to get that engine. It's a small little 2.5 liter turbocharged engine, and it works incredibly well. And I've had it now twice, and I want to say in the 30s of MPG. That was like moving crap too. So highly, highly, highly suggest the Mazda. I think those are probably the 3 you should look at. Yeah, you could look at a Ford Explorer. I wouldn't suggest the Chevrolet Traverse. And if you saw my previous Ask MotoMan from Nashville, I shared with you the tale of woe of my lawyer and board member that he had with a Buick Enclave, which I suggested. So I can't in good conscience give you a Chevy or the Buick. So it's definitely the Mazda, the Kia, or the Hyundai. I would say those over a Ford Explorer. And now let's press on to another truck question, but I wanted to save this one to the end because I think it's awesome. It comes in from a professional photographer. His name is Jesse Kilman. I believe he lives in Tennessee. And Jesse, he wants to go on a cross-country 15,000-mile journey to basically take pictures. And he wants to be able to go, from city to city, but he also wants to go out into the sticks. So this vehicle would also be kind of like a camper van. And currently he's thinking 2 choices, and they couldn't be more polar opposite. There is the Prius V, and then there is a Volkswagen Squareback. Now, my short answer is get the Volkswagen Squareback. But realistically, you do need to live into this thing. You do need to, it needs to be somewhat reliable, and it probably needs some good fuel economy, which I can see why you chose those 2 things. But you and I kind of do something similar in that we create art. We're creative types, and we want to get to places to be able to capture that art. And not every time you're going to have a road. So as great as the Squareback would be, I think you need a vehicle that can go off-road. And no, I don't want you to get like a Nissan Rogue. What I'm thinking is you need to get yourself a used vehicle and actually maybe put a little bit of money into it. And so what I'm thinking is a used Mercedes like ML Diesel. And follow me on my logic on this one. I don't want you to get the nicest one out there. I don't want you to get a fancy one. I'm telling you the Mercedes for a couple of reasons. Number one, a Mercedes with a diesel engine, it's going to go pretty much forever. Then number two, you said you want to go out into the sticks, so there's going to be times you're actually going to sleep in this vehicle, so you could put the seats back and actually do that. And then you're going to carry a lot of gear. I mean, you're probably going to have a lot of, you can't see it, but we have a lot of Pelican gears over there. So you're probably going to have a lot of Pelican cases to be able to put into this thing. So you need some storage in there as well. But here's the most important reason why I'm suggesting the Mercedes. I think it's a combination of you're going to get good fuel economy from a good-sized vehicle, but most importantly, I think if you buy the right one, meaning like a 5 to 6 year old one, you will be able to do this whole trip, put 15,000 miles on it, and get all of your money out of it. And if you don't do too much damage to it, you might even make some money on that, depending on where you buy it. So that is really my suggestion. If you don't want to go diesel, maybe you could buy Daniel's old 4Runner. Maybe you can get a good deal from him in New Jersey. But those are really the two things I would suggest. Highly lean on that Mercedes. So with that, I want to turn this around to you guys, and I want you guys to answer Jesse's question, because I think it's an awesome question. I mean, I take my hat off to you, man, for basically traveling the world. It's going to take you, what, a year to do 15,000 miles just to basically follow your passion and be a photographer? I mean, this is major respect to this guy, Jesse. So I want you guys to help answer Jesse's question. And I don't want to just like yes or no to the Mercedes. Come up with some other suggestions and think about what he has to do. He's got to, A, get fuel economy, B, it can't be too expensive, C, it's got to be reliable, and D, think about this whole resale thing, because that is a real kind of deal. And you know what? There's actually something I'm going to share with you on a fun fact on this just at the end of this episode. But let us know what car he should choose, why he should choose it, and for good measure, let me know if you guys ever did something similar. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you can download for free at Apple iTunes and Google Play. And oh, by the way, did you know we are live on 5 international airlines? And number two, I want to leave you with a fun fact. So I'm suggesting Jesse gets this Mercedes diesel, but did you know that Dr. Jahzzar himself, he did a similar journey like this? When he was in college, or university as they call it, he came over with all of his engineering buddies, and they started in Canada. They landed in Toronto, Canada, and they bought, I think, a 1974 Oldsmobile 98, and they drove it all around the U.S., basically North America, and they put something like 10 or 12,000 miles on it, and they sold the car for a little bit more than they paid for it in California. So if it's good for Dr. Jahzzar, it's gotta be good for Jesse. Until I see you next time, bis später.